Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on this chat. I'm Patrick, and I'm here with Kate.
Hello.
And we're here today to talk really about the importance of the business side of yoga. And it's something that I wasn't as focused on early on in my teaching career. And I'm very fortunate to have found Kate along the way, who's extremely passionate about this side of yoga and the yoga business side. And she's going to fill us in today and talk to us and give us some advice and tips about really how to grow that side and be confident on growing that side of your yoga business. So um, I'm going to turn it over to Kate and
Go
maybe
from there.
just get started. I guess maybe I'll start with a question as far as like, why were you passionate so early, when you started teaching about the business side of yoga? Because I feel like a lot of yoga teachers aren't. They're more worried about just teaching and showing up and finding classes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think I would say it was fairly early in my teaching career, if you will, that I did become passionate about it, but I wouldn't say that it was something that I was passionate about immediately after graduating from my 200 hour. So I had previously worked I had a career as a high school special education teacher, and I left that career with no plan. I just like did my yoga teacher training and then I quit my job and I was like, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. And I like what started to happen is that I got into this place that I think that most yoga teachers do, which is I was like in this season of hustle, running around like a total crazy lady, trying to make ends meet and pay my bills, doing something that I loved. And I knew I was passionate about yoga. I knew that it was like my purpose in life and what I wanted to share with people. And I was so happy and excited to just be doing it that for a little bit, I was totally okay with that. I was like, I'm not in this job that I don't like anymore. It's fine that I'm teaching 11 classes within 72 hours and I am running around from studio to studio, eating on the go, hopping on a bike to try to get there, trying to then see a private client. But then also the reality was, even though I was teaching all of those classes, I still was not making enough money to cover my bills. So then I had like a side job doing freelance work, doing marketing writing. And I was a good writer. So I was like taking on jobs as a content writer and random social media work and just learning as I went. I worked like 15 or 20 hours a week at the front desk of the yoga studio that we were both working at the time, just trying to make sure that I was doing everything I could to pay my bills. But at the end of the day, when I looked at that, I was working like, I don't even know, 60, 70 hours a week, like when all was said and done, all doing things that I enjoyed. But I got burnt out and it was like, I knew it was not going to be sustainable for the long term. I was fairly newly married at that time and I was like not spending much time with my husband because I was just working all the time. And I so very quickly was like, this is a big problem. And if I want to be able to do this for the long haul, I have to change this. Like, I'm not going to be able to keep up with this pace. And so, when most of the yoga teachers in our circle were like spending their time listening to cool music to make really awesome playlists for their classes, I know you, I decided to jump in and start listening to marketing podcasts. And I just like went down the road of consuming as much free knowledge as I could about business and marketing, not
Yeah,
related to yoga, just about it in general. And over time, I was like, well, how could I apply this to yoga teaching, and how could I apply this to being a better yoga teacher? And then eventually, how could I, when we owned the yoga studios, how can I apply these things to the yoga studio? And little by little, I would try out these different things that I was learning about, and then I would see success on a personal level. Then the studio would see success, and it started to work. And I started to be able to earn a bit more money. And now instead of teaching 11 group classes, I only had to teach 7 or 8, or, I could let go of one of those side jobs. And what I found quickly was that I enjoyed teaching yoga more. Like, I showed up for my students more fully. And I think that is why, for me, learning the business side of yoga, I think what it does is it gives you the ability to sustainably earn income as a yoga teacher, to not be stuck in this fight or flight fear mode of just trying to survive, And instead, it frees up time and energy to show up and teach from like a more grounded place. And I felt like I became a better yoga teacher because I felt like I could actually make a living as a yoga teacher. And I think that is the reason for me that I am so passionate about teaching this to people and sharing it and talking about it, because it's like not a topic that people really like to discuss too much in the yoga community, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hearing that, there's two stories that stand out, like two very good teachers that I knew. One was I went to go interview her for teaching for our studio, and I took her class in the city. And after class, we were chatting, and I was like, "Do you have room in your schedule for taking on any more?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm only teaching like 22 classes a week." And I was like, "22 classes a week?"
Oh my
I
gosh.
was like, "How do you have any extra time? How can you do any more?" And she eventually also burned out and had to stop teaching. And then another teacher, when I was in my 300-hour teacher training, you know, she left her corporate job in New York City, did the teacher training. She was teaching part time, and she was very passionate, like wanted to teach yoga. And in 3 months, she realized that she couldn't sustain it. Like she couldn't
Mm.
hustle enough to make up the amount of money that she needed for the lifestyle that she wanted to have. And she left the teacher training and went back to her corporate job. So I guess that's the question, is that people follow their passion. They want to do this, and then they jump into it. And sometimes it works out where maybe they have some business acumen and they can find how to make it work. But a lot of times, I would say the majority of teachers that I've met over 20 years of teaching and practicing is that they try to do it and then they could do it for a certain amount of time, but without the business acumen that you're talking about, there's a burnout or there's a lack of resources, and they have to eventually do something else.
Yeah.
And and so
And that like breaks my
what's the
heart.
advice? Yes, yes.
I mean, so there's first two fundamental things that aren't actually like true business tips that I think become a really important part of the conversation. One is this idea of, I think as a society, but certainly in the yoga community, there's this need to sort of apologize for wanting to make money. Like no one wants to talk about it. It becomes this thing of like everybody wants it, right? Everyone wants to be able to make more money, but then no one wants to be able to just say like, I actually want to make more money teaching yoga. And I think there's this fear of it being like not yogic or being greedy or being, there's like all these negative emotional associations with being able to say that. I guess I want to just break that mold and say like money is emotional, right? Like money, making money in and of itself isn't greedy. What you do with your money then can, like if you all of a sudden become this like crazy famous yoga teacher and you're earning millions and millions of dollars and you're like keeping it all for yourself and just taking lavish I mean, and rock on, like I love a good vacation, but like if you're spending it in like foolish ways, then that becomes greedy. But if you're making money, you're supporting a lifestyle that you love, and then you're spending your time generously, you're donating to causes that you love, like then that's great. Like then you're using your money and the status or privilege that you've earned or worked up to for good. So I think the first thing we need to do is like understand that it is okay to say that you want to earn more money to support sustainability in a lifestyle, to not feel like you're stuck in this survival fight or flight mode. So that's the first thing, is like just getting over that and just saying like it's okay to talk about money, it's okay to want more, like remove that bad relationship with money that it's only associated, having more money makes you greedy innately. And that took me, by the way, like years of like internal that wasn't something I just like someone told me once. Like I'm talking years of working with like a hypnotherapist and all these things to like improve my relationship with money. So that's not an easy journey, but we start there. The second thing is starting to get honest with yourself and defining what a career or job as a yoga teacher looks like for you in terms of what you want, and also like what lifestyle you want to lead. Like I know a lot of people who don't want to be full-time yoga teachers. They actually want to keep their corporate job because they feel like it's a safer bet. It makes them happy. They enjoy it. They can earn a living doing it. And they're like, I just want to teach yoga like twice a week because I love teaching yoga and I want to share it. And so the money side of yoga isn't that important to me. And that is okay. It's wonderful, actually. Like, I think there's so much this feeling sometimes like coming out of a training where people feel like it has to be all or nothing. Like, I'm going to be a yoga teacher and I'm going to do it 100% full time, or I'm not a yoga teacher. And like, you can do both. You can have a traditional 9 to 5 corporate government, whatever that looks like, job, and you can be a yoga teacher. You can do both things. And if
Absolutely.
that feels better for you, then like do that. You know what I mean? And I think,
Yes.
but if wanting to do this full time, as you and I did, is like really what's pulling you and the way that you want to go, that's when then I say you have to, if you're going to do this as a full time career and you want to make a full income doing it, you have to treat it like a business. You have to start to think like a business owner and begin to take the steps to figure out ways to make it sustainable. So those are like the two like
Yeah.
main things initially to decide.
So what are a few of the steps then, assuming that that's what you want to do? You've
Do it
decided
full
that
time.
you want to try to teach yoga as your career.
Yeah. So right out of a 200-hour, the first thing I think in terms of group classes is step one, getting on sub lists to start to actually get classes and be able to build your following as a yoga teacher. So going to a few different studios, locations, testing out classes, showing up at the actual studio to make sure it's a good fit for you, and then saying, hey, can I interview to get on your sub list? Right? Don't go out the gate asking for like the prime time slot at a studio you've never been at. Like, do the work to actually get hired somewhere. That would be step one. Then as you're continuing to teach and learn and grow your audience there, you want to then be able to contribute to those studios and show that you want to help their community and their audience by marketing yourself and your classes. And so to me, the easiest way to do this now and most straightforward is committing to actually being on social media. There's no way around it. I pushed back against this for a very, very long time, but the world that we live in, that is how people connect to people and figure out about things. So it doesn't have to be like complicated and dramatic. Pick one platform, right? For me, it's Instagram. I think yours is the same, but is it Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube? Like, what is the platform that you want to commit to, and show up 3 times a week? That's it. 3 posts a week. Like, get on there, start to market yourself, start to build those connections outside of the studio, online with people. So the first is like get hired somewhere at a studio, make yourself part of that community. The second would be get on social media and start to market your classes, share your message, like unapologetically serve your students, just give tips, give advice. And then the third is finding a way to continue to build those relationships outside of the class, like the yoga class, and outside of social media. So that can be, in my opinion, I think the next tip is to create an email list. If you're into writing and blogging is something that you understand, you could certainly have a blog. You could have like a podcast, whatever it is, something longer form where you're showing up consistently in a more intimate way. And maybe eventually it's all of those things. But initially, my number one piece of advice would be start an email list and email the people on your email list 1 time per week. Just nurture them and be there with them. As you start to do those things, then when you start to put the structure in place to have a workshop or a retreat or whatever it is that you're going to offer that you want people to then pay you money for, you have an audience to actually sell to.
Mm.
So yeah, I didn't start an email list until like much later. And that would go, thinking back, I wish I had done that. That was like the first thing the one thing that I wish I had done sooner.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I guess when I first started, I mean, I didn't have an email list,
Yeah.
and social media when I first started teaching really it didn't exist. And the way in which teachers built their audience back then was it, and talking to you and getting some tips from you over the years, just showing up and consistently, sharing your message in person. And I know your message to me, especially about social media, is using those techniques for in person and applying it
Hmm.
to social media, being yourself, sharing the things that you would share in class and your audience and the people that you would talk to and how you would talk about certain things in class and in person, and really just putting that out there to your audience digitally.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's made it easier for me to look at social media and to use it really as a tool to share what I love about yoga to an audience that's bigger than just the community of people that I can meet in person, which has
Totally.
been great.
And listen, it's like it's not as simple. I made that like broke those 3 tips down. Like it takes there's lots of layers and there's lots of learning and lots
Yes.
of things that need to happen to get to that point. And it does not happen overnight. And I want to be very upfront and honest about that. Like for you and me, I think we figured out how to do this in a sustainable way, but you're talking like a decade worth of figuring that out. Like it
Yes.
and my hope is that we can teach people to do it faster than we did. But like certainly I mean, really even a more baseline step is like be a good yoga teacher, right? Like show up and serve your students in your classes. If you're teaching online, like get good at sequencing, like teach really good yoga classes, build connection with those students. I think first and foremost is the thing. But the added layer, I guess, from like a businessy marketing side is where I think then how do you extend what you would typically do in person into a digital format where you can reach more people, you can grow a bigger audience and build that, out of class connection in a way that like the people's minds have shifted to in the modern world that we live in. I pushed against that for a long time, but I think the second I embraced that is the second there was a lot more freedom to be able to open up possibility to make this a more sustainable career. So, yeah. That's it. That's all I got for today. I mean, we can certainly
Perfect.
dive into these topics more deeply, but I think that's why I am so passionate that I think it's like an important thing to learn. So,
Yeah, and I think it's a great starting point. Like you said, just think about those topics, and then just you have to put in the effort, just like with anything, to
yeah.
develop those. So,
Yeah.
all right.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone for chatting with Kate and I today and listening in, and we'll see you on the next chat.
Thanks, everybody.